what's going on, Ramley? Welcome to the Rams Skinny here on the LA Football Network. Excited to be coming to you a couple days late, but after a Rams season finale victory over division rival San Francisco 49ers. Yes, it was the battle of the backups, but hey, a win's a win. The Rams lock in the 6th seed and a date with the Detroit Lions, which we are going to get into all week. Today, we'll talk briefly about the game. Don't got to get too much into it, but we'll talk about some of the backups we liked and what that future means. And obviously we'll look briefly ahead to the big game on Sunday with more of a deep dive later in the week. But first of all, joining me as always, the hostess with the mostest, the man with the plan, the beautiful hair, the locks of love, Ryan Skinny Tannerson. What's up, brother? How we doing?
Doing fantastic. Playoff football on the doorstep in the new year. Yeah, everything's feeling good, It's kind of nice that we get into this section of the season after all the holidays have kind of ended, and then we just focus completely on hitting our New Year's Eve resolutions and football. That's all we need to do.
Yeah, which we talked about resolutions. I have yet to actually begin those, so hopefully that starts this week because that needs to start happening. But yeah, week 16 and week 17 are tough, man. Like over the Christmas break, like it's hard to stay focused and stay on top of things. Everyone else is off of work, and that's when it kind of ramps up for us. And it's not like the season stops. And if anything, it's busier because they play on the damn holidays. So yeah, it's nice now to basically be like, all right, cool. Rams are in the playoffs. We can just focus on them and not have any holidays in the way. But not in the way, obviously. I have my favorite time of year, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally.
So I also got to prep. I need to prep your intro because I just do it on the fly, and I know I can come up with some better adjectives to describe you. So hopefully next episode I'll have a nice list breakdown than just coming up with it on the old bald dome here.
I didn't know it, but a goal in my life has always been to have good hair. So I mean, at least it's referring to it's helping. It fills my heart at least.
You're beating me, that's for sure. You're beating me. Well, by a lot, and you have some years on me too, which we won't say how many, but it's not that many. Anyway, real quickly before we get into Rams, let's do this at top of the show. Make sure to check out our friends at Underdog Fantasy. Head to underdogfantasy.com or the Underdog Fantasy app. No better time than right now before playoff football. But if you like the NBA, if you like NHL, if you like tennis, if you like golf, racing, whatever, they got every sport on there. When you go to make your first deposit, use our promo code Rams LAFB. It's all one word, RAMS LAFB as in boy. Gets you a welcome deposit bonus up to $100. Minimum's 10. They'll give you 10 free dollars. If you put in 100, they'll give you 100 free dollars to play with. Super fun. Pick them 2 to 5 players across any sport. Choose the over-unders. If you get 4 to 5 of those right, you win. It's that easy. Obviously, it's fun to win some money and make some of those games you don't care about as much a little more interesting. But hey, do it for this Rams-Lions games coming up. Should be a lot of fun. We'll put out some teasers out for what our picks are this weekend. But Underdog Fantasy, Rams LAFB is the promo code. Tell them the guys at the Rams Skinny sent you. 21-20 was your final score. An exciting game for backups. Some fun things to talk about. Carson Wentz obviously being the kind of the talk. Well, let me back up. Puka Nacua being the talk of the town, obviously breaking the rookie record for receptions and receiving yards. We'll get into that. But Carson Wentz played a fairly good game, had the one pick, which can't really say was his fault, bounced off the receiver's hands, but had the 2 touchdowns. One was a rushing touchdown. Looked good in the pocket. Looked like he had good command of the offense for only being there, a couple weeks. So, Ronnie Rivers, good to see him back after being out with injuries with his, 13 carries and whatever. So, I thought there was some good things this offense did in the absence of the great players and defensively, made stops when they had to. Another second half shutout for Raheem Morris's crew. And obviously, no Christian McCaffrey, no Brock Purdy. So it wasn't like the Niners were trotting out their best on offense, but no Donald for the Rams, no stars on the back end, no Ernest Jones. And this guy's pitched a shutout in the second half. So hats off to Raheem Morris and that defense. But what were your overall thoughts from a nice week 18 win and a clinched 6th seed?
Well, it came down to the kickers.
Who would have thought? Like we've been talking.
Maher was just put out there less than Jake Moody, basically. Jake Moody, third round pick, failed to win this game or at least tie this game for the 49ers, and Maher didn't cost the game for him. He did just enough, I guess. But the great thing about having a bad kicker is it's forcing McVay to be a bit more aggressive, kind of in fourth down situations, goal, red zone situations, which we've all kind of wanted him to be. I've wanted him to do that. So if there's any good thing that comes from having bad kickers, it's it's poking and prodding the Rams into the 21st century and into the aggressive football. I just found out, I did not realize this, and it's very embarrassing, but Brett Maher and I went to the same high school.
You should be good then.
Come on,
Brett Maher.
It's tough because I've only had
critical same years.
No, he's 5 years younger than me, so
okay.
We were in the high school at the same time. He was in one of the middle schools there in Kearney, Nebraska. Wow. I knew he was a Cornhusker, but I've only had critical things to say about him since the Rams brought him on. I saw him with the Cowboys last season and wasn't impressed. And when they brought him on, I was even less impressed. So, yeah, that's, it's an ongoing thing. And once again, if the game comes down to a field goal and a nice, 52-yard field goal against the Lions, and that's what costs them the game, that's going to be heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I will say I feel, for whatever reason, I feel better with Brett Maher than I did Lucas Havrisik. So I don't know if it's just as poor as he's been, at least there is some experience there, and he has kicked in the playoffs and has been around the league, for whatever that's worth. One thing I find interesting, and, I never, we try to keep it professional. I'm not trying to troll other teams, and, every now and then I'll say some things, but I will say this, which probably will sound like trolling, but when the Niners, okay, I'll say it like this. The Rams kicking situation as it is still worse than Niners. For how bad Jake Moody has been, I think the Rams kicking situation has been worse. You could argue maybe the worst in football. And it's unfortunate they had Cameron Dicker on their practice squad, who obviously is, the great Chargers kicker right now. But as bad as that is, the Niners took Jake Moody in the third round. And so can you imagine if the Rams had taken a kicker, whether it was Jake Moody or someone else, in the third round, as opposed to taking what should be the defensive rookie of the year in Kobie Turner? And I know when it was happened, I'm not saying Niners fans loved it. I think everyone was like kind of scratching their head about it, but there were some that were like, well, it's a loaded roster. Like, that was the one position of need. They had players at every other position, but still I'm not saying they specifically passed on Turner, but still that shows you that you can get very valuable players. And I don't want to say they panicked, but the Rams got Turner. The Rams got Turner the third. The Niners got Jake Moody. Who do you think won that round? We'll just go with that.
Yeah, I think that definitely falls into the Rams winning category there. That's a nine straight regular season losses, but they got Kobie Turner and didn't waste a pick on an okay kicker, I guess. An okay to bad kicker, we'll call Moody. But coming out of this game, I'm kind of worried about the backup quarterback situation. Did Carson Wentz play himself into competing for a starting position in another team? I could see him going to a place like Carolina and pushing their young quarterback and into a quarterback controversy or a position like that. The big body Wentz is bulldozing and rushing for yards and picking up big first downs and all that stuff. So what are your thoughts on Wentz? Did he play him out of contention for a backup spot with the Rams?
Yeah, it's kind of like it's very reminiscent of Baker Mayfield last year, who, when the year ended, everyone wanted him back as a backup, but I think he did enough, and obviously, he's in the playoffs now with the Buccaneers as their starter, and Wentz has a similar vibe. I feel like the one thing playing in the Rams' favor is, this is now his fourth team in 2 years, whatever it was, went from the Eagles to the Colts to the Commanders, now to the Rams in a matter of a 2-year calendar year. So not saying GMs are the smartest people because they make a lot of mistakes. And, if there's any job that defines insanity, it's football scouts and GMs, because they're like, oh, okay, well, we've seen it now. Now we've seen it. So some team, I'm sure, will want to give him a shot because, as you mentioned, the talent's there, the body's there, the arm's there. If he's healthy, I mean, he was a number 2 overall pick and had an MVP caliber season early on. So there's still some juice there. If I'm the Rams, Stafford, what's Stafford at, 35?
Sounds right. Yeah.
And he said beginning of the year, he still has plenty left in the tank. He wants to keep playing. Even if the Rams go on the magical run and win the Super Bowl, I still think he would potentially come back. Maybe he would think more about retiring if they win and go out on the high note. But I think he's stayed healthy enough, even, taking some shots this year and how much fun they've had, that he'd be back. But Carson Wentz, 31. Depending on what the Rams do in the draft, and, obviously Stetson Bennett, I don't think is the answer of what they're doing. And depending if they take a QB in the mid rounds this year, they may want to really, with their extra cap space, say, hey, we're going to pay Carson a premium to be the backup here. And maybe at 31, he's in the system for 2-3 years. And when, Stafford does hang it up, he can take over the starting role at 33 or 34. And that doesn't force us to turn the keys over to, either it wouldn't be probably a rookie then, but a player who's never started, or make us go back out into free agency. So that's thinking way long-term down the line. But if I'm the Rams, outside of a team saying, hey, we'll give you $20 million to come start, I think they got to pay a premium to keep him as a backup on their roster. They have the money now to do it, which they didn't have this past offseason. But we've seen how important a backup quarterback can be. You look at teams that are in the playoffs that have a backup quarterback, Browns with Joe Flacco, the Steelers with Mason Rudolph. Not saying Rudolph is a great backup by any means, but he got it done. You saw the Colts almost go on a run with Gardner Minshew and came down to a dropped pass in the red zone on Saturday night. So I think it's important for the Rams to finally address the backup QB position with someone they can win football games with if Stafford either is hurt or decides to hang it up. And a perfect case, and I'm getting long-winded, I'll toss it back to you. Perfect case is, if Carson Wentz is on this team to start the season, they might win that Packers game, and they might be contending for a much higher seed than the 6th seed. They might get a home game out of it. So it shows the value of having a competent backup, and they've never put an emphasis on it since McVay's been here. Obviously, it's worked okay for them, but I think this is the year, with Stafford's age, with having some cap space, I think this is definitely the year where they need to actually put an emphasis on it and make sure Wentz is back in a Rams uniform next year.
Yeah, I love all of that. And it also frees them up from having to spend another draft pick trying to answer that. What Stetson Bennett may or may not have brought to the Rams, we'll never know, or probably won't know. But that's a speaking of Kobie Turner, Jake Moody, kind of that's another one of those sliding doors moments where maybe they do find another defensive player, somebody in the backfield, maybe something, so that's just for 2020.
Quarterback that can play. Like, they could have gotten like Aiden O'Connell or someone that can actually be on the field.
Right. But I do love a lot of quarterbacks coming out in this draft. So maybe they do pull the trigger on that anyway. But yeah, I think you said it. You said everything that needed to be said there. But I think we need to talk a little bit more about Puka Nacua and his historic, finishing off the 2023 in the right way, or I guess 2024 now, but the season in the right way by breaking both the rookie reception record and receiving yards record, and having to struggle for it. The 49ers didn't just let him pick that up. They were making sure that he was staying on the field as long as possible. Do you think that's good gamesmanship, or is that they're just trying to be rotten eggs out there?
No, I think I don't care how about bad blood, no bad blood, whatever. You never want to be the team that a record gets broken on. And so I think, you got to go out and play the game. And I'm sure none of them have any ill will towards Puka, but it's like, hey, I don't want to be the corner that gives up the record that stood the test of time for rookies, and all of a sudden I'm in every highlight because you did it against me. So yeah, I think it's great gamesmanship, and it's so ironic that on his touchdown grab, he tied it. It's like one more yard. What a better way to break the record than on a touchdown. And instead he had to tie it and then wait basically almost a full quarter and a half before he was able to get that next reception to break it. But yeah, what a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just amazing that CJ Stroud is still the front runner for the Rookie of the Year. I mean, he's obviously a great player. I said it on the last podcast. This is historic. This is 63 years in the making. Passing guys like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. That it's pretty incredible. And Jalen Waddle, he broke his record as well, which obviously isn't 63 years, but still impressive nonetheless. It's going to be exciting to see playoff football once again with Puka Nacua out there. So we've sung his praises, and I don't know if there's a lot more to be said about the guy, but a reason the Rams won that game as well is Puka Nacua. And I don't know if you caught the handshake at the end, but all smiles between Sean McVay and Shanahan. I don't know if that was commiserating on kicker misses or not, but it was nice to see that there's some camaraderie between the two old rival, good buddies, big brother, little brother kind of relationship there as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's always fun. And I think McVay was, 9 straight, I think we said, right? Regular season matchups without a win against the Niners. And so, maybe this one is different because it's backups, but hey, a win's a win. And it meant something for the Rams because they keep the 6th seed instead of falling to 7. Quickly back to the Nacua and CJ Stroud. I mean, this is so hard because I get what CJ Stroud has done and being able to turn that franchise around from, being a bottom feeder franchise to having the 2nd overall pick where he was taken to being doubted and having a fantastic, not just a good rookie season, a fantastic, but he was one of the top quarterbacks in the league this year. Where I struggle with him winning it over Puka is a couple things. One, when you break a record at your position, like that's got to mean something. Like, again, the year Herbert beat out Justin Jefferson, and it was close. Herbert broke rookie passing records. Like there were yards records, touchdown records that he broke as a rookie quarterback. CJ Stroud, for as great as his season was, didn't break any records. Puka Nacua did. A 63-year-old record he broke. The other thing, and I know the Pro Bowl is, it's whatever, it's pageantry at this point, but Puka Nacua is a Pro Bowler. CJ Stroud is not. He did not make the AFC Pro Bowl roster. And so when you check those 2 boxes, like it has to swing in the favor of Puka Nacua. And again, I get how important the quarterback, it's the hardest position in all of sports, what he did for that franchise. Both are deserving, 100%. I just think, and this is honestly even being unbiased, not just because he's a Ram, but when you break a record and you're a Pro Bowl and the other is not, like that has to mean something in the voting for this award. So to me, it absolutely should be Puka Nacua as the Rookie of the Year. But in my heart, I truly believe they'll give to CJ Stroud because it's just basically a quarterback award. It's just like the MVP at this point.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because, for all the reasons, Christian McCaffrey should probably win MVP.
Yep.
Just because, everybody else is splitting the votes and he's an incredible player. And, it's, football's a team sport, and as much as, baseball is a team sport, there's a lot of one-on-one between the pitcher and batter, and goalies in hockey are so important, and NBA can swing on one player that's coming into the league. And so it's one of the things that makes the sport amazing. And the more and more that we get to just honoring how great quarterbacks are, and CJ Stroud and it's refreshing to see a really good quarterback come in and turn a team around along with the head coach. And, he's making Nico Collins look like a number 1 receiver. And, I'm not trying to take anything away from that, but this is historic. And not only that, but Nacua came in week 1 as the number 1 receiver on the field and just put up 118 yards, I think, against the Seattle Seahawks and really set the tone for the season and wasn't kind of sitting around, waiting for Cooper Kupp to come back. He really took the bull by the horns and had, several great, he was setting records from week 1 as a 5th rounder. as a under, I was going back through MVP or rookies of the year, and I didn't go that far back, but you get to, Dak Prescott. He's a fourth rounder, fourth rounder quarterback as well. So, just a unique player, and underrated, and maybe that'll work out for him. Maybe he'll keep the grind on, and maybe he'll try to get offensive player of the year or MVP or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing that probably is swings in his favor at quarterback is comparing to Herbert. When Herbert won, he won it even with the Chargers losing like 7 straight games and missing the playoffs. That was the last year of Anthony Lynn when he got fired, and he was still able to win it. Whereas CJ Stroud, even missing 2 games, still led Houston to the playoffs. So, I mean, there is something to be said when you lead your team to the playoffs, but it should be Puka Nacua. So, one more thing to add about this team as we kind of do our end of season wrap, and I'll see if you want to say anything, and we can mention the playoff game. But like I said, we'll dive deep into Rams Lions here in a couple days, because what a great matchup that's going to be. But just want to we've talked about him a ton, so we got a ton of time on him, but just got to give another shout out to Kyren Williams. I mean, the dude missed 5 games when you look at the 4 he was on IR and then didn't play in this game. So played 11 games or 12 games and finished 3rd in rushing behind Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry. I mean, just that is so impressive to me.
And in week 1, he was behind Cam Akers.
Yeah.
Cam got 20 carries and he got 14 carries. So, I mean, let's call that 5.5 games that he missed.
Yeah. Like incredible. So, that's incredible. I think this is a guy that, I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but if can stay on this trajectory, this team commits to him, the way he fits in this offense, the way he played this year, he's a guy that heading in the next year with this 18-game schedule or 17-game schedule, 18-week schedule, I think can do something really special in terms of, we're talking history books with Puka Nacua. I don't want to get ahead of myself and start talking Eric Dickerson's record and stuff like that. But when you look at the trajectory and the projection he was on, missing those 5.5 games, still finishing with over 1,100 yards, and, the rest of the NFL, Derrick Henry played, to my knowledge, all 17 games, only finished like 50 yards ahead of him, and Christian McCaffrey was first with 1,400 yards and also sat the last game. But, I think he can do something special. And it's surprising, and I think it shows the state of running backs in the NFL because you don't have that one singular workhorse back. I mean, think of, during the heyday in the 2000s, Jamal Charles, before him, Terrell Davis, obviously the Broncos, Sean Alexander with the Seahawks, Steven Jackson with the Rams, Curtis Martin, like those guys would have rushed for over 2,000 yards with 17 games. But now you just don't have those workhorse backs, except Kyren Williams kind of was that for this Rams team. So great season. And I think he can definitely do something special if he's the premier guy moving forward.
Yeah. And shout out to the Kevin Dotson and Avila draft pick, and bringing in Kevin Dotson. I think that's got to be number one free agent that you're got to go after. They obviously do a good amount of work for Kyren Williams, bringing him loose. So, just a great draft class that's going to free up capital so that they can spend it in other ways and make sure that 2024 is going to be even better than 2023, which is going to be just phenomenal to see. Regardless of what happens in the playoffs, this is going to be a really interesting offseason. It's going to be a really fantastic 2024 season. Another fun year covering the Rams. What can I say?
Yeah. I know, as wild as the 23 offseason was with, all the free agent releases and trades, all the 10 draft picks or whatever they had, 24 is going to be so exciting because they finally have cap space. They finally have a first round pick for now. We'll see if that stays true heading to the draft or if they trade it for a premier player, but it's gonna be a wild, fun, exciting offseason to cover this year because it's an offseason we haven't really seen since McVay's been here.
Quick thing before we wrap up, just easy yes or no. Raheem Morris, is he back with the Rams or is he getting a head coaching opportunity?
He'll be a head coach.
Yeah,
no doubt in my mind, and he deserves to be.
Absolutely, yeah.
Where do you think he let's end with that then. Yeah, we'll talk Lions, Rams next episode. So everyone, make sure you come back for that. Great, obviously, Goff Stafford, Brad Holmes, the GM there. Aubrey Pleasant went there, got fired, back with the Rams now. So many storylines. We'll get into all of that next episode here in just a day or two. So make sure to be on that. But let's end with some Raheem Morris talk. Me and I both agree he'll be a head coach. Where do you think he lands, or where do you think he's the best fit? Which can be the same answer.
I like him for the Chargers, oddly enough, because they just hired and fired a Rams defensive coordinator. But I think that with what the Rams did in this offseason, establishing their pillars of Stafford, Kupp, Donald, and strip down the rest, got to a good place. That's kind of what the Chargers need to do. They spent a lot of money. They're over the cap, 40-something million dollars over the cap. But they've got Justin Herbert. You can't really waste time with him. You gotta make sure that he's kind of in a competitive system and in the right system. And they need. And one of the things that the Chargers have had a really hard time doing is developing their draft talent and maximizing their free agents, maximizing their trades. They just kind of they get a big F for that. So Raheem Morris kind of oversaw the biggest remodel of the Rams, which was on the defensive side, where they cut a lot of weight, brought in a lot of young talent, brought in a few low cost free agents, and then they maximize that defense. The defense is playing much. They're punching above their weight. So I love that idea for him. But maybe a reunion in Atlanta. That's also a possibility that I like for him as well. A lot of good players on that. You just got to get a good offensive coordinator to kind of get them pointed in the right direction. And so I like both of those ideas for him.
Yeah, I agree. I know the Chargers fans won't like to hear that, but I think Chargers, obviously their first choice is Jim Harbaugh. We just saw what he did. And
I hate that.
I hate that. But I think that's obviously their first choice, and the reports are it's basically the Chargers to lose. Like, he wants to kind of be there. They want him, but if they just don't give enough money or negotiations or power or whatever, like, it's theirs to kind of flub up, if you will. But if they do that, to me, I think, I like Dan Quinn for them, and I like Raheem Morris. And I know Chargers fans will just look at what happened with Brandon Staley and kind of keep it similar. But it's kind of like when you scout prospects, right? Like, you're not supposed to scout the helmet, you scout the player. That I think that has to be the same with coaches. And just because they came from the same team with the Rams, the same regime with McVay, Raheem Morris has so much more experience. And I think that was probably the biggest detriment for Staley. He probably just got hired, a little too early. I think he needed to be in the McVay system longer, kind of learning the ins and out of how the Rams run things, if they were going to go in and try to emulate that, among other things that we can talk about. Whereas Raheem Morris, has been in the league for a long time. He was a head coach before with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was on the Commanders staff with McVay and Kyle Shanahan and Bobby Slowick and all those guys, as he was the defensive backs coach then. He was on the Falcons staff, as you mentioned, with Kyle Shanahan as the OC. He was on the offensive staff for a while. Before he became the DC, he was the receivers coach. So he knows offense as well. And now he's been with the Rams for 3 or 4 seasons since Staley left, 3 seasons since Staley left, and kind of, has done different defensive schemes. He kind of adapted Staley's system, made it his own a little bit, but he didn't want to totally overhaul things to make it fit with the players. And we're seeing this year doing a lot of things differently because of the personnel they have. So, scout the player, not the helmet, scout the coach, not the organization necessarily. Being with McVay 3 years, all the experience he has, I think he fits great with the Chargers. But I also think, as you mentioned, that the Falcons or even the Commanders are both good fits with them. I think the Commanders is interesting because with new ownership, it seems like they're really going all in on doing everything the right way, kind of similar to what the Broncos did when they got their Walter Penner group. It's like they're not going to spare any expenses on doing anything. So that could be a good situation for him, just kind of getting everything that he needs. Now they got to find a quarterback, obviously, which is why the Chargers job is so much better than a lot. Same with Atlanta, like, got to find a quarterback as well, but they have great pieces there, as you mentioned. So Chargers is probably the best fit for him. I'd probably go Falcons, or I'd probably go Commanders 2, Falcons 3. But what a hell of a job he's done. And yeah, you and I both agree. I think he'll be, unfortunately for Rams fans, he'll be not with the Rams next year, as he'll be a head coach.
Yeah, I love that. I love that Commanders idea as well. Just having him as a face of your franchise. he's definitely a player's coach, and he's a straight shooter and knows what he needs to do. And that's what that franchise needs to kind of get themselves out of the muck and the mire that they've been stranded in for the last decade or so or more.
Yeah, exactly. It's still wild to me that 2013, when you look at that coaching lineage and just they were not even like a playoff team. Like, it is just wild. With Mike Shanahan, the great Mike Shanahan as the head coach, and all those guys on staff. Obviously, you learn a lot through the years, so you're not great right when you start, but it's just crazy looking at that staff has, like, potentially, if Slowick and Raheem Morris get a job, there'll be 7 coaches that were on that staff, head coaches now.
Yeah, it's amazing.
What is it? It's McVay, it's LaFleur, it's McDaniel, it's Shanahan, and then if Slowick and Raheem, so 6 coaches from that staff are now 6 of 32 are now head coaches. Wild.
Wow. Yeah.
Wild. So. Well, let's end with that. Great stuff. Rams get the 6th seed. Like I said, we'll do a ton of deep diving into this Stafford, Goff, Rams, Lions matchup on Sunday Night Football. Cannot wait. Going to be an absolute blast. But for Skinny T, pleasure as always. For Ryan Dyrud, make sure to follow us on social at RL Anderson LAFB, at Ryan Dyrud LAFB, at Rams_LAFB, or at LAFB Network for just the main account. If you're not watching on YouTube, we'd appreciate it if you go to YouTube. It's Rams LAFB. Hit that like and subscribe button for us. And obviously, LAFB Network is where you can find all of our Rams coverage and content. Everyone have a great couple days. We'll be back in just a few to preview this playoff matchup. Yes, Rams are in the playoffs, 10-7, finish the season. What a year. What a coaching job. We'll get all into it in a few days. Thank you all for hanging out with us. Talk to you all soon.